So now, now it is my great pleasure to introduce Nguyen, and who is currently the program manager of the human trafficking program at API Chaya in Seattle. She is an award-winning expert in serving foreign national survivors of trafficking, and she currently supervises a diverse direct service team across Washington state and has more than 13 years of experience providing direct service to human trafficking survivors of all forms of trafficking. Hao is a presenter and panelist at state and national conferences, an advisory board member of the Seattle University Social Work Program, and a consultant of the Refugee and Immigrants Committee at the Archdiocese of Seattle. We are absolutely honored to have Hao today presenting and sharing with us the needs and essential partnerships to serving labor trafficking survivors. She will be joined by Chulita Havill, who will share some of her personal experiences to solidify how important client-centered support really is. Chulita is a trainer, survivor mentor, and storyteller. She is a core survivor leader at API Chaya and coordinates the activities for the survivor groups. She has spoken at regional and national levels on topics related to human trafficking, and she's interested in advocacy, community organizing, and policy change. So I will turn it over to you, Hao.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this session, and thank you for having me today. Today's webinar, you will identify the common labor trafficking survivor service needs, recognize client barrier to service connection and fulfillment in needs, and pinpoint partnership. Sorry, I can't see this part. Okay, pinpoint partnership opportunity essential in the client support. Next, please. So why does it so important to understanding needs and partnership when serving labor trafficking survivors? There are many reasons, and I know that some of you already know that there is a huge gap between the needs for labor trafficking survivor and sex trafficking survivor. So knowing the needs of labor trafficking survivors, it will help us to narrow the gap in services for all trafficking survivors. And also it's helped narrow the funding gaps between sex and trafficking survivors. We can dedicate more resources to reduce vulnerabilities amongst a community that at risk of human trafficking, especially for foreign-born people from other ethnic communities. I think it's very important for us to do more prevention work in those communities. Also, it will help increase the identification and prosecution of labor trafficking crimes. So imagine when we have all the service that survivor needs, they can be more motivated to come forward and to get services and report to law enforcement about their experience. It's also help improve protection for labor-based and non-immigration visas. Next, please. So what are the needs of labor trafficking survivors? There are so many needs, and a lot of them are very similar to sex trafficking survivor. However, because of a large number of labor trafficking survivors are foreign-born survivors, who don't have either documentation or don't have the knowledge about the system or the rights here, they tend to need a lot more intensive services from service providers. So we categorize between short-term and long-term needs here on the screens. Besides basic needs such as food, safe housing, immediate medical care, mental health care, safety plans, a majority of labor trafficking survivors also needs immigration support for T visa or other immigration reliefs. They also need language access, English class, life skills, support groups. And another big needs for labor trafficking survivors family unifications. I don't want to go through every single items here, but you can see on the slides all the things that we list that we provide at API Chaya to our survivors. The basic needs for short-term needs are here on the slides. I already mentioned some of them, but you can go to the next slide, please. That I mentioned a little bit earlier about the long-term need for survivor. This is actually super important to find resources because, as I mentioned, undocumented survivor, many of these resources are not like just available for them. Survivor who are undocumented, I can talk more about the barrier later on, but these are the needs that is important for service provider to know so that we can advocate for more funding so that we can develop more access or resources for survivor to have their needs met. So one of the long-term needs that we normally work with a client is to sit with them to have a goal with them, to develop a goal and to hear their plans. And we can plan out about our funding resource to see if there are rental assistance money to give them or long-term need in terms of long-term housing. We will need to work with them on immigration's legalization of their visa in order for them to apply for like government fundings or help them with employment skills, going to employment readiness class so that they can get their work permit and their skills so that they can get a job, move forward with long-term housing, medical care, legal care, all of those are extremely important. And I also mentioned about family unification, substance abuse treatment, support groups. We at API Chaya have a survivor leadership group, and this is very important for many survivors who have the desire to get more involved in the movement, wanting to become an advocate like Chulita, or wanting to involve more policy makings. This is an opportunity for survivors to raise their voice about on behalf of other survivors to help the law enforcement or lawmaker, to improve the law so we can serve our clients better. Next slide, please. So what are the barriers of these labor trafficking survivors? You know, when survivors escape from their traffickers, they face a lot of barriers. A lot of them, like I mentioned, they don't have documentation. They are very unfamiliar with the system. They're not understanding their rights, especially their workers' rights, their rights to get protections, their right for services. And the barrier to seek employment because of lack of work permit, lack of documentation, not knowing how to apply for a job, not knowing how to prepare a resume. And also for those survivors who being arrested by law enforcement, and the arrest record can be a big barrier for them to seek employment. And here I can invite Chulita to share a little bit about her experience of how her arrest record impact her employment seeking. Chulita?
Yes, thank you, Hao. Hi, everyone. My name is Chulita Havill. So it found that no matter how much vocational and interview training that your client have, without an expunged criminal record, client cannot find any job or any training program like my experience. I tried to get into nursing program in Chulita Community College, but it's not easy to get in. I have to have like English 101 test, math, something like that. And I have to learn and take too much effort to improve my English because I'm English a second language. And after I get into a program, The problem is my criminal record is that big barrier, and it's make me cannot get into a program. I have to work with my case manager, and then my case manager have to connect me to the lawyer to dismiss my criminal record. And I get lucky on that time on my case. Everybody, any agency, law enforcement, and general attorney is helping me to seal or dismiss my record so I can get into nursing program. And for my recommendation is, if you as a case manager, you have to work with your client closely. If they want to get into any program for education or find a job, make sure that they don't have criminal record. If they have, is make sure criminal record is dismissed to prevent frustration and more trauma. And yeah, believe me, it's very big deal if this is happen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chulita. Other barrier that we normally see are language and cultural barriers. Language play a really, really big role. So I think it's just extremely important for service provider to take language access as a very essential needs for survivor in every single agency. Survivor, a lot of them have no means for transportation. And when they go to different agencies for support, normally they encounter agency that is kind of one size fits all response. They don't really design to serve survivor with very unique needs. People who either undocumented, or people who don't speak the English, or people who don't have the kind of pretty much not fit with the population that they are serving. They normally run into those scenario or situation that the agency will turn them away. And when they seek housing, a lot of housings, well, I can say that majority of the housing in Seattle are pretty much for female identified people. In our program, we serve about 35% or a little more, 35%, probably between 35 to 40% are male survivors of trafficking. And it's almost impossible for us to find housing, like the subsidized housing or government shelter, provided shelter. Even in faith-based community, it's just extremely difficult to find housing for male labor trafficking survivors in our area. And I believe those are very similar with other area as well. I need to figure out how to change my slide a little bit because it's very difficult for me to see at this point. Also, a little more of the other logistical barriers are, agencies have different rules, policies, and sometimes they ignore the barriers that the client have to face. When clients are newly came out of their trafficking situations, a lot of them don't know how to take the bus, don't know how to navigate around the areas. And we tend to say, okay, you need to be on time. You need to show up at 2 p.m. for this meeting. And if the client failed to do that, they face consequences. I have a short story about my experience, I think about 12 years ago when I'm pretty new in the work, and I work with this survivor who came from Sierra Leone. I don't know much about that culture at that time. And when I met with this client, we did an intake, we provide her, connect her to a shelter, and we provide her a gift card for grocery. And when I took her to a Safeway store for grocery, I automatically pull her to the food section because the grocery cart is purposely for food, and the funder actually only approved that cart for food purpose only. I took her to the food section and I said, hey, here the food section, you can choose whatever food you want and just grab whatever, and then I will show you how to use the cart. She didn't seem interested at all. She didn't even look at the food, but she kept like looking for another section, and I had no idea what she was looking for. I keep walking by her side, and until she saw the section where they have hair product, she rushed to that section and she grabbed like multiple like items from the hair section. And I said, I don't need food. I want these stuff. And I say, I'm sorry, but you know, the card that we gave you is actually for food. And our funder probably won't approve for anything that cosmetic related or beauty related, because our program only provides basic needs. You know, we are the one who identify and service provider and funder also tend to identify what basic needs are for survivor. And she say, I need this. Since I got out of the situation, I have not been able to do my hair. I don't feel like myself. I don't feel like a human right now. And that's why I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to eat. I pretty much don't feel like myself. She responded like that. And I called my supervisor immediately and I said, look, my client really needs some hair products. And I know that our policy doesn't allow that. And I know our funder doesn't approve that. Is there any way that I can buy this for her? And my supervisor was nice enough to say, okay, you have up to $40 and you can use our agency credit card. And we can use our immediate, emergency funding for that, so that she still can use that card for food. It's a big learning experience for me because after that day, the next day, she came back. I have to go back a little bit. The week before that, so she's been with our program for about a week. And she has, I think, about 2 or 3 different appointments. One appointment is to see law enforcement officer for an interview. And one appointment is with the attorney, and another appointment is for her medical checkup. She canceled all of them. She just refused to go to those appointments. I got very frustrated because for me, those are extremely important appointments that she should be there. I was new in the work, and I was so like have so much energy and want her case to move forward without really consider her feeling at that point. After she got her hair product, the next day she take the initiative step and call me and say, hey, I want to now reschedule to see the law enforcement officer who want to talk to me. I also want to meet the attorney. I want you to reschedule for me to do the medical checkup. She was so positive and pretty much became a very different person from the person that I knew her before. I learned so much from that experience, and I learned that the survivors should get to identify the needs the basic needs that they have. Next slide, please. Another barriers that survivors normally face, especially for labor trafficking survivors, are the relational barriers in services. After going through a lot of trauma with the trafficker, they got out of the situation, and there are so many things that they have to deal with, especially the feeling inside themselves, the trust issues, the feeling of isolation, the feeling of shame, the feeling of disconnected because of cultural differences. And a lot of them, because of the trauma, the impact of trauma, they don't have the ability to seek for services. Some of them keep blaming themselves for putting themselves in the situation where they were being trafficked. And they might have bad experience with services before. I have a lot of experience about that when people either try to to report their crime to the police or try to call to seek help, and they're not getting the help that they need. And that's why they decide to withdraw. They don't want to ask for help anymore. And another fear is the fear of being prosecuted. The fear that we will report them because they are undocumented. Who are we for them to trust? You know, they don't know us yet. So they go through a lot of barriers. Next slide, please. Okay, so before we go into more detail about trauma-informed and client-centered approach in our work, I have an activity, and I would like you all to give this a poll, Charlie. Okay, so we have a poll that just popped up. Can you just look at these picture and tell us your best guess of where these women come from? Are they from the same country? Are they from different country? Or you can't tell based on looking at the way they dress? And let me know when you have the results, please.
I'll give it just a couple more seconds. It looks like people are still answering. The poll might have popped up in a different window for you. So if you're able to find it, throw in your guess. I'll close it in 10 seconds.
So 63% say that you can't tell based on looking at them, and 31% think that they came from different countries, and only 6% say that they came from the same country. The answer is the 6%. 6% got it right. They actually all came from China. They identify as Chinese and they have Chinese citizenship. They just came from different ethnic groups in China. The reason I do this activity is because we tend to make a lot of assumptions when we serve our clients. And imagine that these clients call in for services. And when we ask them where they come from, and they would disclose that I am Chinese and I'm from China, the assumption that I normally see our team make is that, wait a minute, I will connect you to a Mandarin speaking interpreter or a Cantonese speaking interpreter. None of these women speak either Mandarin or Cantonese. They each have their own ethnic dialects. So this is to remind all of us to not make assumptions, but to ask questions. Even though they say that I am from China, ask them, what language do you prefer to speak? Do you want an interpreter in that language? And if you can also ask what gender you prefer as well. If gender, different gender interpreter are available. Next slide, please. Another activity pretty similar is also make your best guess of which country have the most language spoken in the country. China, Philippines, Vietnam, India. Just make a random guess, and I will share with you the specific number of languages in each country pretty soon.
Looks like we're slowing down. We had about 50 people participate last time. Let's see if we can get it there, and I'll close it in 10 seconds.
Okay, so we have 41% said that China have the most language spoken. 39% said India have the most spoken languages. Philippines has 12 people said Philippines have the most, and 8 people said Vietnam's. Good guess. So for the official language, I can say the answer is China is the correct answer. They have 302 languages spoken in China that being recognized by the government. India, I can say that official languages in their country is 121. However, they have more than 1,500 different dialects, and many dialects don't even have written language in their area. So India, they said that they pretty much have the most language spoken, but a lot of languages, people just don't have written language. Vietnam have 110 languages being spoken in the country, and Philippines have between 120 to 175 languages in Philippines. This activity is for us to realize that even people come from a certain countries, or like people have so many ethnic group and backgrounds, and very diverse in every single country, and especially languages. So it's just so important for us to know that and to aware of that when we serve our clients, and to avoid making assumptions. Like always ask about their language needs whenever we encounter any clients. Next, please. So this part, we will talk about service delivery, the how and the what. Our agency is pretty serious about using trauma-informed and client-centered approach, culture appropriate and proactive language access. What I mean by that is when talking about trauma-informed and client-centered, the how, like how are we delivering the service to survivor is extremely important. In the way that we show, like how can we show a humanity? How can we show our care to the survivor? In addition to the material stuff that we provide to our clients. Focusing on the how is extremely important in when serving labor trafficking, survivor of foreign-born survivor, or any survivors, you know. What I mean about that is that reflects on your agency current services available. Is there language access, a protocol at your direct service programs? Are there funding available for in-person interpretations on the phone, on Zoom? Are there funding available for professional interpreter, not Google Translate, not family member or friends who translate for their clients? We actually not allowed to use friends or family or Google Translate at our agency. We always have to offer language access, and we have to find a professional interpreter. If they're not available to be in person, this is outside of pandemic time, then we can find people either on Zoom or on the phone. And a lot of time, if we can't find people within Washington state, we have to seek out nationally or internationally. Sometimes we work with survivors who very few people spoke that language. We have to search like around the world to look for an interpreter for that client. Is mobile advocacy a practice at your agency? Are you require the client to come to your agency to meet you at the time that you decide? Or can you go to the client? Can you let the client decide where is a safe place for them to meet you and what time in the day that is most convenient for them? Are you allowed to do that at your agency? And as mentioned earlier, are your client get to define their own basic needs? Not service provider or not funder who should decide that basic needs for the client. We normally say food, shelter, or clothing are like a setup for other basic needs for survivor, but a lot of time, like the example that I provide earlier, that's not the case. So the client should be able to identify their own basic needs. Your client have the option to choose the advocates at the agency. A lot of time, we tend to make the assumption that a Spanish-speaking client would want to work with somebody who also speaks Spanish, or a Vietnamese client would want to work with somebody who came from Vietnam. We make a lot of assumptions about that. And a little later, I will ask Chulita to share about her experience about that, but I want to go through this first. Other clients get to choose their own, like I mentioned, their own safe place to meet people and their own time. Are we respecting client physical boundaries? A lot of time, you know, in America, our culture is when we see client, we want to show our friendliness by giving them a hug or handshake. A lot of clients don't want that. So I would suggest that before making any body contact, ask the client first, or pay attention to their body language. Some clients like to bow, some clients just want a smile from you. And especially for people who experience some sexual assault in the past or some other abuse, that they just want to keep a distance from people. And hugging or handshake or physical contact can be traumatic for them. Are you keeping eye contact when talking to clients? A lot of time, I see that service providers tend to like have a lot of form in front of them. And when you are doing intake, the whole time is you looking on your paper and writing. With my own experience, I normally try to remember all the questions on the intake form before meeting the clients. And when I meet with the client especially for the first intake, all I do is just looking at them, ask them questions or chit chat, asking questions on the form, on the intake form, but I try my best to avoid writing anything or looking on my forms. When I need to write something on the form, I would say, I am very sorry, but can I take some notes? Because whatever you just share is extremely important for me and I want to take it serious. Is that okay with you? Don't just look at your table or your phone or your computer or or the intake form or whatever document the whole time when talking to the client. It's very important moment, especially during the intake time, to build trust and to develop relationship with the survivors. So even those small gestures can make a really big difference. And when you ask questions, any kind of question to learn about the client, explain to the client why you are asking those information, what for. Normally when I ask clients about, do you have children or do you have, or especially when you screen about sexual abuse experience or a drug history, It's very important to tell the client, why are you asking those? What is the purpose? You might say that I am going to ask you a few difficult questions. And the reason I ask this is because I want to make sure that you might be qualified for other program or other fundings. We want to make sure to serve you better. That's the only purpose that I am asking. But don't feel pressure to answer the question. You can just ignore my question or say, I don't want to answer that question. That's totally fine. So it's very important to do a little bit of prep work before asking those questions. Otherwise, survivor might feel that you are not, you try to exploit the information and you're just being curious about it, or you might want to find out to maybe report to someone. And Chulita, I would like you to share your experience about what you encounter when you face people who are not trauma-informed or client-centered when working with service provider.
Yes, thank you, Hao. Hi, everyone again. So my first experience will be with my therapist. And on that time, and it's my first time to seeing a therapist. I don't feel comfortable at all with my therapist because it's first time, she just asking me a lot of questions just about my story, what happened to me, why I've been trafficked, without asking me first. And she never asking me what I would like to talk about and what is my expectation from the session. So it just feels so uncomfortable on that day. And I just feel like she didn't focus what the care that I need on that time. I just feel like she just want to exploit my story just for her own benefits. I know she mean good, but she didn't aware that what really important is a care that I need on that time that she need to focus on. And in my case, I think she should build a relationship with me first to be able to earn my trust. And trust is developing over time. It's not just for one day or a few sessions. So that's what my experience with my therapist. And the second experience is with my own case manager. So on that time, I don't know that I have the right to say yes, say no with my case manager. I thought it's okay and it's good to have people to support you, to helping you. And I will do everything what they say. Even sometimes I don't feel like I don't want to, but just it's just what I thought when I grow up, and maybe it was my personality that I don't know how to say no, and I don't know what is my right. And one day I go with my case manager to Social Security, and actually I have a lot of support on that day. Even my law enforcement agency who take care of my case came to support me for paperwork. And because on that time I get a housing, but I cannot move in the housing because I don't have Social Security. And on that day, I have a lot of support, but I still don't get my Social Security. And I get so frustrated and I get so sad. I cry out with my case manager. And I complained with her why everything never been better, why it's just so difficult. Instead, she chose give me empathy, but she's screaming at me, and I'm shocked with my situation and with my case manager. She say, I'm tired too. I have to pick you up. I have to take care of you. Brought you here. And for me, I have nothing to say. I just walk away. And on that day, my case manager just made me feel that I have no value. I'm worthless and I have no hope. I thought people who support me is sincere and be on my side. And on that day, I just numb. I went home and feel nothing. And I try to feel my physical feeling. I use the hanger hitting my leg nonstop. And I still feel nothing. I feel numb. But I feel hurt here. I hurt so bad. And it's made me to commit suicide on that day because I have no hope. And I want to tell you, my case manager is Asian. It came from the same country with me. But for me, even you are Asian, speak my language, or even you understanding my belief, my culture, it doesn't mean that I feel comfortable with you and trust you. If I can choose my case manager, if I can go back, I will not choose the person who came from the same country, the same culture, because what happened to me is make me feel ashamed. And I don't want he or she to know, especially direct it from me, the story from me, because people, I have bad experience with my people when I live in my country since I'm young and I'm grow up and have career. Because people in my country, they just, everything just, they just assume and go to bad conclusion, and they're very discrimination. So what happened to me on that day shouldn't happen. If my case manager have empathy for me and support me when expertise is needed and when crisis is occur, not to make it worse. Thank you.
That's a very powerful sharing, Chulita. Thank you so much. What Chulita just said really proves how important it is on the how when we deliver the services to our clients. The empathy, the show of humanity, of care. Every single gesture, small gesture, is just so important when we put our client feeling first, when we put their well-being first. And remember that our goal is to making sure of their overall well-being and their stability in the long run. The clients should be the decision makers. And know that this is the most important that I learned is the client is the expert in their life and the authority of their life. And service provider are pretty much just expert in option, in resources. And our role is to be there to support with whatever decision that they make. Maybe you believe strongly that they are making a very poor decision. Our job is to support them. And the reason to do that is we help them to feel empowered to make decisions. And if they fail in that decision for some reason, that they make a poor decision, at least they learn that you are there, that services are available for them, and they can always come back. This is the same, if you are domestic violence advocates, you know this already. But I just want to remind all of us, and I always remind myself that they are the expert in their life. They know when it's safe, where it's safe. They know what they need. Our role is to support them. It's also extremely important to, at the intake, especially, to be very clear about your role. Don't overpromise. Be clear about your role and responsibility. Tell your client what you can do, what you cannot do, what you will try to do if the client asks for stuff that you don't normally have yet. Just be very honest with the client and be very clear. And again, from what Chulita shared, it's extremely important for us to prepare the client when you ask sensitive questions, so that they know your purpose of asking that. So it won't be like Chulita said, she feels like she's being exploited by the therapist by asking so many questions without knowing how uncomfortable she feels at that session. Next, please. So we're gonna talk about the needs through partnerships. For me, it's impossible for after 13 plus years working with labor trafficking survivor, it's impossible to move a labor trafficking case forward or many other other trafficking cases as well without collaborating with other agencies. We don't run a shelter at our agency. We don't have like a law firm. We don't have law enforcement officer hired at the agency to do investigation or to sign off on T visa applications. There are a lot of things that we don't have, and the client have a lot of needs. So it's very important to consider the best is to before encounter the client, or if your program in the developing stage right now, think about identify the key partner to collaborate with first, and start building the relationship, establish the relationship before serving labor trafficking survivor. If you already serving, continue to build as many relationships as possible. Housing agency, law enforcement agency, immigration attorney or other legal attorneys, civil criminal attorneys, criminal defense, faith-based communities, school, embassies, office, service providers. There are so many service providers in the area that can support our client needs. State-funded agencies such as OVC, OTIP, PSSS. Talking about OVC funded programs, you should check out the Future Without Violence programs agency, the employment program at the Future Without Violence. They have a program that supports survivor with training and finding employment opportunities. And talking about employment, there are many agencies, either recruiter agency or any agency, hotel or groceries, or pretty much every agency that can hire, can have job offer. Other agency that we should think about developing relationship with them. Churches, medical providers, you know, when working with labor trafficking, especially undocumented survivor, I mentioned the barrier earlier. They are not eligible for health insurance, for housing, for many things. They don't have money to hire a lawyer. So it's really depending on how the agency, like the work of the agency to develop relationship with pro bono attorney, with medical providers. At API Chaya, we are very fortunate. About 4 or 5 years ago, we were able to work with a big hospital in the area to designate a program. Well, a lot of hospitals, they have charity care funding program, charity care program for people who have low income or no income. But we were able to work with them and say, hey, look, I know that you guys are allowing people to apply for this, and you normally approve for them for 3 months to 6 months of benefit, of charity care benefit. Can you make a special, access to survivor at our program where they can have up to 1 to 2 years of the award time frames? And they agree. So they designate their own system of referral. So whenever we have a survivor who needs healthcare, all we do is just to call that person or that very unique phone number that they provide us. And they already know that by calling that number, those clients are from our programs. And normally other people out there, they have to reapply every 6 months. Our client doesn't have to reapply until 1 year. And there was a period of time that they allow us to have the benefit for 2 years. And after that, if they need extension, 1 year, and they can ask for extension up to 2 years of benefit. And right now I am in the process of developing relationship with other big hospital in the state, because we serve survivor all over the state of Washington. It's very convenient for the client if we have those access nearby where they live. So those are example of developing relationship. Next, please. How do you build or start building relationship or maintain relationship with other partners? I think the agency, the entire agency should have a protocol about that, so that people can invest time and effort, because some of the relationships, it can take really long time, especially who are not government related programs, who don't really have government support with resources. Private entity, for example, they will not support you if they don't know or they don't trust you. So like Chulita mentioned earlier, building trust can take a long time. And that's the same thing with us building relationship with partner agency. We should identify the key participant, like I mentioned earlier. And in order for you to know the key participant better, later on, I can mention a little more about you can collect insight from the client, have a conduct a needs assessment to know what are the needs of your client. Are they needing an attorney? Are they needing employment? Are they needing mental health or healthcare, or the kind of job or vocational program that they need? List all of that and reach out to those agencies. Search for the people, the key contact of those service, and then contact them, meet with them in person, talk to them about your work, invite them to be your allies, and talk to them about the importance of involving into an anti-violence movement. A lot of, let's say, landlord or community landlords, they can, well, normally we can say that they are very profit oriented. They only want to make money. But I was very fortunate to meet with many people in the community who have businesses, who have housing, who run different kind of employment program, that they really want to make a positive impact to the community by supporting agency or programs like us. Next, please. And I mentioned a little bit about housing, because the biggest challenge in working with labor trafficking survivors, especially undocumented survivors, are finding safe housing for them. I am sure this is a big challenge for every single service provider in our country, regardless of who we are serving. When we need to find housing for our client, you know, especially when I work, I can say that majority of our client in the program, at least 90% or 95% of the survivor in the human trafficking program at API Chaya are undocumented by the time that they enroll in the programs. That means they are not qualified for transitional housing. They are not qualified for government funded housing in general. And for non-government funded, like for commercial housing, it's just extremely expensive to find housing in Seattle right now. One bedroom apartment right now, there's nothing below $1,500. There's nothing, like in the nearby city as well. The average of a studio that my coworker renting right now is about between 1,800 to 2,000 for a studio within King County of Seattle. Outside of Seattle a little bit, you might be able to find something about 1,600, 1,700, but and look at how much we get, how much funding we have to provide housing for all like general assistance to our clients. The most that we got from some of our government contract is $800 to $900 for everything, not just housing, including, you know, transportation, food, phone, medical, housing, everything combined in there. Within, we have to work within that 800 to 900. So how are we gonna expand housing resource? How are we gonna build relationships to find housing resource for our clients? I focus a lot on landlord, community landlords, or community-owned housing, community landlords, by building relationships with those people that have, you know, house for rent, apartments, or even rooms to share. Whenever I go to any events or any party or wherever that I go, if I overheard that that person or that woman or man have multiple apartments for rent or sharing the rooms, I would do whatever to go and start a conversation with them and to start building relationship with them and start talking about our work. Sometimes it takes years. It takes a long time. But with your consistency, like contact them regularly, invite them to coffee or lunch or dinner, and just keep talking about your work and invite them to become an ally or become a partner with you. And one way for you to give back, I am not sure about the tax law right now, but back then we were able to say that, hey, if you rent out a room for $1,000, our program only have 500. Can you rent the room for 500 for about 3 to 6 months? And our agency will issue a letter to recognize that you donate the rest, like the other 500. So at the end of the year, each client, if they stay there for a year, we can recognize that they donate to us about $6,000 $6,000 of cash or whatever. And some landlord, they really like that. And many other landlords, they don't even care about receiving the letter. But it's very nice if you can like draft a letter like that and give it to the landlord and invite them and talk about their positive impact at your gala, at your events. Put their name on your website to recognize them as donor. Make sure you ask their permission first. But it's, the letter is for the tax deductible or to recognize the donation that they make to a nonprofit, and they can file tax for that. Next, please. So here are some recommendations that I think we are about times, but when we work with labor trafficking survivor and to provide more trauma-informed client center or cultural appropriate services, this is extremely important for us to think about who are we going to hire to join our team in the agency. try your best to hire a diverse team of workers, of social workers. Diverse mean diverse in background, in sexual orientation, in belief, in languages, and disability, people with disability as well. I think we should open access to all kind of diverse group of staff so that it's easier for us to have staff, well, to have our client to have more option to choose, and also it's easier for us to develop relationship with clients when they feel connected. Not always the case, like Chulita say, like a Thai, an Asian worker or a Thai worker, not always the choice of a Thai original survivor. But at our agency, API Chaya, we have about 40 staff members, and we have about, I think, 12 different languages. We have people with disability, we have LGBTQ staff. So we normally offer the client to choose, like, are you comfortable working with this or with this or with this staff? And then the client can choose that. Put aside funding to send the client to training, to get more training on working with, especially for cultural appropriate piece, or training how to become more trauma informed and client-centered work. Ensure there are language access, meaning that you will have to designate like a chunk of money aside just for language access. Every year we have, like, we've been increasing every year language access interpretation money for our clients, and allow the staff to invest time in building partnership with other agencies. Allow the staff to go out and meet with them, even like have coffee and lunch with them during work hours. Those are very important to do. And a lot of time the agency, because of all the workload, there's no like capacity for people to really do that. But if you have, like, let's say you are focusing on building relationship with housing, I would highly recommend to hire a housing navigator person in the agency, so that person can, all they do is just to go and meet with potential partner or landlords or whoever partner that you want to build relationship with. Those are very important. Develop an intensive case management protocol for the advocates using cultural humility, trauma-informed, and client-centered approach. Having a very clear guideline, specific guideline for all advocates to follow, and to train new advocates when they enroll, when they join the agency, is very, very important. Those are a few suggestions that I have for your agency if you haven't had them. Now is the question times, I think, Q&A time.
All right, thank you so much, Hao. That was a wealth of information for our audience. We're already getting a lot of positive feedback in the chat. For those of you that aren't able to stay on for our Q&A portion, we want you to know that we've got some upcoming events that we're very excited about. Preparing for employment and naming from and healing from trauma. I apologize that the dates are not on there, but I believe that it's on March 28th. And the last week of April is the Naming and Healing from Trauma event, where we will be talking with a survivor about the importance of understanding labor trafficking experiences, even if you can identify that other victimizations have also happened. So they might even be connected to services. If you're interested, join us for those events. And I'm going to get started with the Q&A. Again, any questions that we don't get answered today, Hao and Chulita will be able to take, think about and respond in our follow-up, where you will also get the webinar recording and the key takeaways from today's event. So if you have any questions at all, throw them into the Q&A, and don't forget that you can use the thumbs up symbol to let us know what you want to hear first. So Now, first, how do you balance client preferences of interpreters with limited resources? In our area, most of the people that speak the languages are community members.
For me, before talking about who to connect, explain to the client about the option for language access, like what are the limitations, what are the possible options, and let the client know ahead. Don't overpromise about that, and say, I understand that you need an interpreter, and in this area, currently the people who speak in your language, they might not certify or don't have like a professional training. Do you feel comfortable if we have an interpreter through the phone who are more professional? We can connect you with the interpreter from another state or another country even. Those other protocol that we normally do at API Chaya, we try our best to avoid using community member. It's gonna break confidentiality, and they are not buy for confidentiality. And that is extremely important, especially when you work with labor trafficking survivor or foreign national survivor, because community are normally very small and people tend to gossip about stuff. And even if they sign anything with your agency promising that they will not disclose, I feel like that is not really like legally work if they ended up disclosing. So try your best to avoid using community member as much as possible, and think about another solution for finding trained professional interpreter from elsewhere, like through the language line, the national language line, for example.
Thank you, Hal. I also, from personal professional experience, want to share a reminder that you're all used to having kind of uncomfortable conversations with secondary family members, friends, asking them to leave the room when appropriate. So you already have these skills. The client is your priority, not the interpreter. Even if you use a local interpreter for the first round, let them know you're going to be asking the client what their preferences are. That might be really difficult for the clients to answer with the person involved, but at least they do know their rights. You are attempting to do your best, and you're letting them know that, like House said, there are other resources so that you're not using community members, especially when it's a really small local community. So our next,
and I can add to that. Sometimes client preference is to use friends, and I would love to but we normally meet with the client in a separate room and use an interpreter on the phone first, and explain to the client that by using friends or families, here are the pros and cons. After they know that and they still decide to use the friends or the family, that's up to them. But let them know the risk of that before agreeing to that.
Thank you, Hal. Our next question, something we can all relate to, I think. The pandemic has changed how we offer services, with them being mostly remote. Can you talk about the impact of this model? There are some changes, but also some opportunities.
A big change for our agency. You know, the nature of service provider are wanting to do in-person services, and during pandemic, it's just so difficult. You, especially when serving labor trafficking survivor who are foreign national born, foreign national, and not speak the language. You have to use interpreter and explain to them all the paperwork on Zoom or on the phone, which is very difficult. There are a lot of limitations that we can't really change, but we develop a protocol where the advocates still go to see their clients if needs. We try to limit that, but if the client have a very difficult with like filling out the form or or they're really in crisis and need us to be there, we allow the service provider to drive to them, and especially as long as they can keep a safe distance, and explain to the client beforehand that I'm gonna come to you, but I am very sorry that I would not be able to take my mask off. You will have to wear your mask, and we will be away from you for 6 feet. And what we are going to do is I will explain to you through like an interpreter on the phone of how to fill out the form, or I will do it for you and you just give me all the information. And we sometimes deliver food for our clients by dropping off in front of their porch. And the positive things that we find is that a lot of our clients were able to learn more technology, were able to sign form online, and were able to join Zoom for the first time in their life. We have like survivor gathering group via Zoom in the past 2 years every quarter. That is just very amazing, but unfortunately, we have to like understand that some of the clients cannot do that, and unfortunately, we can't do anything about like for those clients who say that there is no way I can learn technology, and those are the clients that we tend to go out to see them more and to provide service in person more. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's how we it's a lot of shifts.
I think that was probably helpful for a lot of people on the line that can relate to those changes. We're going to move to the next question. What are ways you share information within partnerships when working with folks that are undocumented or with precarious immigration status? How is the high level of confidentiality maintained while working across organizations?
Very general when we build relationship. For example, when we build relationship with landlord, we can say that, you know, our agency serve survivor who a lot of them can be undocumented. Some of them might have like drug history or criminal history, but if you trust the work that we're doing, like trust us, we are wanting to maintain long-term relationship with our partners. We will not place our client in a place that it doesn't work out. It might ruin the relationship with the landlord. So I normally can be very honest about the situation at first hand by saying that our client doesn't have documentation yet, but we are working on that, and it might be about 6 months or a year to get that, or whatever time frame. Whatever you are going to share with your partner about a specific case, especially in housing situation, because it's more individualized clients, you have to get the permission from the client first, saying that because of the current situation that we can't really find subsidized housing for you, we will have to rely on community landlords. There are multiple options. Would you be willing to let us disclose that you currently don't have documents, that you might need support while you're staying at that housing, which sometimes you might, normally the drug using is something that we are very careful about placing client in community landlord. But for those clients that are very successful in participating in rehab program, and we see a big improvement, we will tell the landlord with the client permission that this client is in that program and they are doing very well. But then, you never know. You never know. Sometimes they might collapse. They might relapse. And would you be able to support us and let us know if the client do any violation at the housing? Just call me at this number and I will go out and support the client with that. After you build a solid relationship with landlords, they normally collaborate with you very well. And I have like multiple experience with like positive experience with many landlords who our client ended up violating all kind of policy. And I let the landlord kind of know some information about that beforehand with the client permission.
you, Hal. Again, if anyone has follow-up questions on any of these questions or on the topics that have been discussed today, feel free to throw them into the Q&A. We're still here for 12 more minutes.
I want to add, I'm sorry, I want to add that a lot of undocumented clients, they don't have a lot of experience. Well, they don't really have experience in renting their own place, and they don't really know their responsibility. So we also develop a contract with the clients about before we place the client into any housing. If we know that they tend to bring people inside the housing, or they might use drug or alcohol, or they have, well, regardless, we have a contract with our client by explaining to them that here are the policy of the program. If you agree with these policy that you're not gonna bring drug in, you're not gonna bring like friends overnight without telling the landlord, you respect other like tenants in the housing or whatever, like you come up with a list that is quite similar to the housing contract of, you know, normal landlord they have, and you have explained to them in as much as possible, and repeatedly explaining and making sure they understand that contract, and ask them if they feel confident that they can agree and follow that. Then have them sign and talk to them about the consequence, like honest consequence. Like now we are placing in there, the landlord will kick you out after 3-time warnings, or 4-time, or 2 times. And you will not be able to do this or that. You should like keep the house clean. If you want to move out, how much time you need to tell the landlord. This way, we are educating clients of how to become like a tenant. And it has been very successful with us. Like majority of our clients follow very well. And for those who have high risk of like breaking the policy, we will try to avoid putting those clients into those landlords that we already established. We can find like housing with a case manager on site who can provide more support to those clients.
Thank you, Hal. I love the empowerment model of making sure that they have the transparency, knowledge, all of the understanding about moving in while there, and the potential consequences, what happens after those 3 times. Our next question, could you provide resources and ideas for U.S. attorneys on how to be victim-centered when working on labor trafficking cases? Are there specific resources and training from the Department of Justice?
I think OVC or OVC TTAC, they have a lot of like trauma-informed training on their website. I might be the Freedom Network also have like resource about trauma-informed client-centered approach.
I think for me, CAST comes to mind as well, for specific attorneys and legal services. And that is an agency similar to Framework, who is always available to provide specific training and technical assistance for regional departments, for teams, that sort of thing. And they have a fantastic list of resources on their website. So I'll put that link into the chat as well. And if anyone in the community has anything in mind, throw that into the chat. We are all in this together. And I will move on to the next question. This one is for...
Sorry, I can add that you can also contact the Freedom Network to request for in-person training as well, or like via Zoom training, because they have a lot of fantastic experts in providing training on trauma-informed client-centered approach.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hal. Chulita, someone in our audience wonders, what kind of advice would you say for people who have experienced similar things to you?
For me, first of all, is because survivor most of the time work with case manager and see case manager all the time. And for case manager attitude, if they have warm attitude and very genuineness and empathy in your presence when you meet your client, that will make your client feel valued, feel worthy, and being understood, and will make it easy. And it can, I think it's not, may not be easy, but much more smoother. And being in this situation is hard, and so everything's so complex, but have someone who understand you, it will make you feel stronger and want to to fight for yourself. And but yeah, I can say it's take time. It's even myself, it's make me who I am today. It's take me over 10 years. Thank you.
I have a follow-up question for you, Chulita. Being on the service provider side, being a case manager, a therapist, holding other roles in the past, I have worked with clients who prefer not to have interpretation services because of the fear of the kind of closeness of the community and just general comfort in their English skills. And I think too that I was one of the people that they were able to connect with and speak in English. I wonder, how can service providers make sure that they are building that relationship and asking questions to make people comfortable, so that if there's any lack of clarity on things that are being said or resources, that the survivor can ask? Because I think that's one of the biggest fears of providers. I'm so scared that if I don't use an interpreter, that maybe something will be missed and a resource will be missed. So how can we make sure that you feel that survivors feel comfortable to ask questions?
For me, even from my own experience, is something is happened. It's so much when you got rescue and have a lot of agency, to support or to to want to helping you, and lack of the language barrier is first, is one of them too, that the client might be not quite understand, even you have interpreter, sometime, or sometime like in person. Sometimes the client, even myself, I can sense that I don't trust this interpreter. Yeah, and how, that's the problem. How can you make your client or survivor feel comfortable? Is, I think it's three key, the basic that I tell before, that person, how that person can make their attitude is warm and welcome, and and be sincere, and not just to come here, interpret, and then after that you just talk about the client that, oh, for example, as a survivor, I'm so afraid that even interpreter, if that they say they're professional, but sometimes I can see in their attitude that they're not professional. They might talk about my story that I be trafficked, and they talk with friend and family. And the second is the tone of voice, and it's very important too. Especially you have to use interpreter translate on the phone. Sometimes tone of voice, the survivor can send that they're not sincere and they're not professional. I know it's hard, but the key is everything is not just provide case manager or, even law enforcement, lawyer, or even nurses, doctor. It's take time. The key is relationship. How much can you make your client feel comfortable with you? How much that you can make yourself to be present, to make your client that feel to trust you. How you can make they see that you understood what they've been through. Yeah, so I think that's the key. I know with some client it might be easy, with some client it might take time. Yeah,
Sounds like just putting in the person to the conversations. I think that's a good reminder too for individuals who are on this call who've been trained in like Western practices of like, don't talk about yourself, get to the work. This is what we need. The clients just need resource linkage, and the importance of warming that that process and seeing the human with curiosity, and showing up a little bit as a human ourselves.
yeah.
Appreciate all that you've shared, Chulita, and how in the chat you have a plethora of resources, including some upcoming events at Framework and also our satisfaction survey. It's really important for Chulita and how who worked so hard, who put so much into this to hear your responses on how they did. So please take the time to do that. And I hope that you all have a good rest of your day.
So much, everybody, for having both of us today.
Thank you, everyone.